Hey guys,
Hey, Carl.
Hey, Carl.
played any good games lately?
I was playing this one called The Qubit Game, but I don't think that's the one you're talking about.
Oh, I'm talking about the game that when you play it, it brings down Russian websites.
Much more fun.
We'll talk about that later. Hey guys, before we start, I want to read a tweet from Stuart.
Awesome.
And he says, last week I passed my CISSP exam.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a tough exam. Nice work.
And I'm hoping that our listeners know what that is. But if they don't, what is it?
Certified Information Systems Security Professional.
So he says he's familiar with the compliance topics, but he says, I haven't coded since I was using BASIC on an Apple IIe back in high school. I haven't networked anything ever, unless you count splicing the telephone wires in my college dorm room.
Which is awesome.
That means I had a lot of studying and learning to do, and that's also where y'all came in. Your podcast reinforced the reading and classwork, and it normalized a lot of the information, plus gave me a level of confidence I wasn't getting watching mind map videos.
That's awesome.
Yes, but has he played the game? All right, Stuart goes on. He says, as an example, this week you talked about Microsoft patching and the 2 0-day patches. It wasn't until I was listening to y'all that it finally clicked what that really was. That kind of thing is a valuable memory prompt for test taking. And, as importantly, a confidence booster when I realize I really do know what that means.
This is great.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we want.
Yeah, he says, so thank you. I wouldn't have passed without you. Always asking those uber smart guys to stop, go back, unpack, and explain that. Keep up the great work, Stuart.
Great. Now he's going to stop us more often.
Well, yeah, that's my job, man.
No, that's awesome. That's not an easy exam, honestly.
No,
that
it's like 5 hours of...
Yeah, it's a lot of work to understand all of the compliance and regulations and everything from evidence handling to physical structure security and that sort of stuff. So congrats on that. That's
yeah. Well,
awesome.
he says he knew the compliance stuff, which is the stuff that I wouldn't know. But
yeah, that's the tough part.
Yeah, that's the tough part.
Right.
The rules and regulations. Like, how do you set up a data center? Dwayne was down at a company in Florida that is now having legal troubles with the legislature, and they know how to set up a data center. But there's a lot that goes into it that we don't think about. I don't know if you want to mention that time, Dwayne.
That time in that place.
Time?
No, that was an awesome tour. Speaking of data centers, that was an awesome tour. I mean, yeah, like I think the guy who ran that data center was out of Central Casting, honestly. Like he was a short, crew cut hair guy, and he's like, "Welcome to the data center, gentlemen." And you're like, "Wow, awesome." Then you're talking to him, and he's like, "This building was built to data center standards by AT&T back in 1970, so and so."
I think he was one of the toy soldiers in Toy Story.
Yeah,
he was like,
one of Santa's elves, or the leader of Santa's elves. All right, so we have a pile of stories. Which one do we want to start with, Dwayne?
So let's start off actually with Hack DHS.
Okay.
DHS.
So DHS is Department of Homeland Security, right?
Yes. Yep.
And the headline is Hack DHS Bug Hunters Find 122 Security Flaws in Department of Homeland Security Systems. Uh-oh.
Well, that was the plan, though.
Which is awesome. Yeah, honestly. So if you follow sort of the history of exploitation of networks and that sort of stuff, a lot of the really big companies that exist today in security, like Core Impact and that sort of thing, those companies all started off with really bright founders who liked finding bugs in software. And then they would either sell those bugs to government agencies, et cetera, or they would spin them into their own products to try and find holes in customer networks. So bug bounties haven't always been around. And they were fairly new. I'd say 10 years ago, I'd be surprised if you found a bug bounty program. And it's awesome to see like government agencies now participating in bug bounties and saying, find them.
And there's money in it. It says DHS awarded a total of $125,600 to over 450 vetted security researchers and ethical hackers with rewards of up to $5,000 per bug, depending on the severity.
Yeah, and what's interesting there is like There are several people on Twitter I follow who their main job is just bug bounty funding. Like they literally, you could be an independent contractor and just make your living finding bugs in software and either submitting them directly to the company or using something like a HackerOne platform, whatever that may be, which is really cool.
Yeah, or using ransomware against them.
Career advice from Security This Week.
We need a theme song.
We do. Hey,
I'll
kids.
work on that. It's time for your moment of career advice. Oh, wow. So, all right. So you said this is exactly what they should have found, right?
Yeah. So it's funny. You read these articles, and a lot of people go, "Oh my God, so many bugs!"
Right.
And here's the deal: there are bugs in everything. Like software, every piece of software ever developed it has an issue with it in some way, and we find them years later sometimes. So it's great to see that many bugs shake out. Honestly, Carl, I would have been more worried if they had posted an article saying, "Hey, bug fest for Department of Homeland Security, 0 bugs found."
Yeah,
we found nothing. Yeah.
Right. All good. And you'd be like, "Oof, that's scary."
So what it really means is they've patched 122 bugs.
Yeah. Those would have been 122 different ways for foreign nations to exploit, exfiltrate, control DHS assets in some way. So that's
great.
Awesome.
That's good news.
Yeah. Yep.
They're taking our jobs.
Taking our jobs and taking our fobs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a way to spend the money in a different way than hiring us. You could hire us and we'd do the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or you can crowdsource it. It's just a different approach to red teaming.
Yeah, which is fantastic. Actually, what's interesting too is you get a different view too.
Mm-hmm.
Like we follow a paradigm when we're attacking a company like an APT, or we've talked about this a bit, an advanced persistent threat. What would a nation state do? How would we profile you? I mean, to the point where, sometimes we're socially profiling like people coming and going and what cars they own, and like literally like a nation state may profile you and try and breach an organization. Sometimes you're really just interested in super intelligent people in different aspects, just trying to breach the software. Don't give us a whole APT workup. Just see if you can break this piece of software. I want you to check it out. And that's where bug bunnies really shine, which is kind of nice.
Cool. All right. Should we talk North Korea now?
They're never in the news, the North Koreans.
I know. They've been pretty quiet on the hacking front.
Although, according to the Washington Post, U.S. hasn't stopped North Korean gang from laundering its crypto haul.
They love laundry, don't they?
Right.
They have very good laundry services in North Korea. And also money printing services. I heard that they're like number one in counterfeiting U.S. dollars, or they used to be anyway.
Wow. I can't imagine how hard that is.
It is very hard
to counterfeit. I mean, there's special paper, there's special ink, there's all sorts of threads in there. I mean, does any other country spend that much time on,
I think Europe does.
But, if the leader of your nation threatens you, your family, and everyone with death, if you don't come up with, a hack, then you're probably going to work pretty hard to find how to do it.
Yeah, that's true. That's very motivating.
Death is a good motivator.
Although death can't, as Patrick and I have been told in the past, death can't be a step on the way to success, right, Patrick?
No, definitely not.
Cannot be one of the steps on the way to success.
Death is not your stepping stone.
So this is a good thing. Bug bounties are always a good thing because it's people trying to do the right thing. So and it also helps, people practice in a live fire environment.
Yeah. So,
all right, Patrick.
So getting back to this North Korean crypto haul laundering thing.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So according to this article, despite U.S. law enforcement identifying the Lazarus group, wow, not easy for me to say, as the thieves, the hackers have laundered 17% of the crypto haul, which was $600 million. So it's interesting. Wow. It's really hard for you to, if somebody does, even if a ransomware group or something along those lines do pull in a massive haul of cryptocurrency,
Right.
it's really hard for official agencies like the U.S. or whoever to then, take that haul and steal it or freeze it. I know that's a common process here.
Right. Turn it into real currency that can be used somewhere.
Right.
Yeah. If ever there was a currency that needed laundering, it's cryptocurrency.
I mean, we have whole series of shows in the U.S., Breaking Bad, Ozark, that are all about money laundering.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of ways to do it.
So I don't understand, though. So let's say you're a terrorist organization and they find your accounts, the Five Eyes, whoever.
Yeah.
There's an easy way for them to freeze your accounts. They can go in and go with all of the, associated banks and whatnot and say all those accounts, you can't access the money anymore. They're funding terrorism. Mm-hmm. But with cryptocurrency, I don't think there's any facility in the technical contracts to do that. I mean, from the legal side, I don't think you could do that either. But
right. So how do they do that? It says here the gang has worked to obscure the crypto's origins, which is the whole problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to trace it to anybody. Primarily by sending installments of it through a program called Tornado Cash, a service known as a mixer that pools digital assets to hide their owners.
It's like exchanging to different currencies, sending it to different wallets, things like that.
There still must be a paper trail if it's blockchain based, right? I mean, that's the whole purpose of blockchain.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Take a look at something like Monero. So Monero is a cryptocurrency, but they're all of their transactions internally inside of Monero are completely blind. So let's take, for example, Patrick's a terrorist, Carl's not, and I'm not. And
thanks.
And the three of us pay an entity, right? Let's say you're paying for new audio equipment. I'm paying for, I don't know, a new computer, and Patrick's paying for a Tomahawk missile. And we all pay. It's a pretty legitimate scenario, right, Patrick?
Perfectly.
So we all pay this one crypto entity. Let's call it Monero or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
And then that entity pays the other third party. So which one of us paid for the Tomahawk? None of us. All of us paid Monero, right? And then Monero had money available for the Tomahawk guy and the computer guy and the audio guy.
So this is a little disturbing. So Monero's website, getmonero.org, says, private, decentralized cryptocurrency that keeps your finances confidential and secure. And I thought the whole lure of cryptocurrency was that it can be traced. Like people can look at the ledger. That's what blockchain is, right?
Right.
So it depends on privacy for what and for who. So the original, remember, Bitcoin's the original. Most people, when they talk about crypto, they're just talking about Bitcoin.
Right.
And then there are so many different flavors. Some of them are based on the premise of there's too much transparency with Bitcoin. We want more privacy so the government can't follow and see what's going on. So if you got coins like Monero and other implementations, it's like walking, do you ever see the old cowboy movies? They walk up the river a little ways to make sure that their footprints can't be monitored. It's that kind of thing. These are the rivers that people get lost in.
So it's a lot more like cash.
It is. The biggest problem for North Korea is there's not enough. The crypto market's big, but it's not big enough to hide all the money they need. Yeah. They need a lot more than $600 billion. They need trillions of dollars over many years in order to really avoid sanctions. So it's giving them some relief, but it's not the whole thing.
Yeah. Wow. Wowie, wowie, wow. Just when you thought North Korea was not crypto mining, it turns out, and this article says that among the cryptocurrency thieves nations, nations that are doing criminal crypto, North Korea is by far the weirdest. Which, of course, they're weird.
Stay weird, Austin.
Yeah.
Do they have like a weird meter? Is that like, do they rate them? Like,
I don't know, but just look at that guy's hair. And by the way, you don't say anything if you're a North Korean citizen about the guy's hair. No, that'll kill. They'll kill you for that.
I think you could have stopped with about that guy's hair and just said you don't say anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
That's pretty much it.
I'm not too worried.
No.
All right. What's next, guys?
Good question. So next I have quantum ransomware. This at first,
Not to be confused with quantum computing, please.
this at first concerned me, Patrick.
Yes.
That somebody had invented the first quantum ransomware. And I was at first concerned that it was quantum, and then was really happy that if it's quantum, it doesn't run anywhere, because there aren't but a few quantum computers on the planet.
Yeah, it's not. It's just a name. It's the name quantum, no relation to quantum computing for those.
It's a marketing name for a piece of ransomware.
It is. It is.
Man.
Absolutely is.
It's like cloud. It's just somebody else's computer. There's nothing special.
So I could market quantum music to code by,
Yep.
That'd be
for
awesome.
example.
Yep. Absolutely.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around how I could market that. But anyway, okay. So what happened
Right.
here?
So honestly, with the all this is well, we start seeing, especially now that there are large ransomware groups that get broken up, and their source code leaks. We start to see a lot of the older ransomware. So this is a particular piece of ransomware that actually drops an implant called Cobalt Strike that will allow for remote access to a computer. But it's not new. This is the same sort of paradigm. If I remember correctly, this quantum ransomware was actually just a revariant of the AstroLocker. Either way, it's just another piece of ransomware. So what we start seeing is a lot of the ransomware that's been released, people re-swizzle it so that AV and endpoint detection can't find it and then send it back out.
I'm pretty sure in all my years as a software developer, nobody's asked me to re-swizzle anything.
I can't tell you how many times we use the term re-swizzle. It's not like think of it like refactoring a virus, that antivirus can't find it. You're taking it and modifying it.
Okay, modifying.
So, all right. No, you know what? This is actually a really good point. So, how hard is it? A lot of people ask me this, customers. Hey, how hard is it? I'm running Windows Defender. I'm running CrowdStrike. How hard is it to bypass some of these? How hard is it to get a piece of virus to run on, a virus or ransomware to run on there? And really, if you were to take a piece of ransomware, here's career advice. If you were to take a piece of, let's say we code a piece of ransomware, which isn't that hard to code. And then we compile it down to an executable of some sort, whether it's an exe, whether it's a Golang executable, whatever. But we compile it down to an executable. Then you take that executable and never drop it on anything online. So there's a site online called VirusTotal where you can drop any file and it will tell you whether there's a virus in there, and it'll run it through 60 different antivirus engines and say, 6 of them picked this up as a virus. Okay. But if I'm writing a virus, I don't want to put it up there, because if I put it up there, then every threat hunter on the planet sees it. So
that's right. So don't do that, criminal.
It's like getting on the bad checklist at the local bodega.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so when you go back in, you need to make sure that they don't recognize you. So it's like the kids in the trench coat, 3 stacked high, trying to get into the movie.
Right. It's like stopping off at the police station before you go rob a bank. And I just wanted to say hi. Here, take a picture of my face. By the way,
they got to re-swizzle so they're not recognized. It's really about changing recognition.
Okay.
So you take this, malware, ransomware, and you have it on your computer, and you shut your computer off from connecting to the internet and doing all that good stuff. And let's say Defender finds the bug, and there's all sorts of tools out there, like Defender Check. I think that's by Rasta Mouse, will go through and actually look through the file and say, Defender says this is a virus because of this part of the code. Okay. And it could be the name of a variable that you named. Right. It could be a static string that's inside the code.
Could like be a command key called or send a URL. Tomahawks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So then all you do is you go back into your source code and you change that line to be something else. You either change the uppercase to lowercase, you break it up into 2 strings instead of 1, you recompile it, and you run it against Defender Check again. And then it goes, oh no, this is clean now. We've never seen this before. Right?
Okay.
So in some cases, it's that easy to take an old piece of malware or ransomware that you find all the source code for on the internet and then just re-swizzle it, right? Change some of the code around. It does the same thing.
Really?
Right, exactly.
You're hiding something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And sometimes that obfuscation takes the form of just changing strings, and sometimes it takes the form of actually modifying the flow of the code because they're
Oh.
looking for heuristics. So as
Okay.
long as you're doing kind of the same thing, but it's not exactly the same, it's really hard to find.
Okay. All right. Very cool. All right.
So there's your advice. There's your advice to bypass AV in one simple.
Yeah. So that's what happened here.
Right. So it's, and I think we'll start to see a lot of these, especially as we're seeing a lot of ransomware get open sourced, if you will, forcibly. We're going to see a lot of new players pop up in the ransomware market, and all they're going to do is just change the code slightly enough so it doesn't get detected by current AV.
Okay, so in other news, the American Dental Association got hit with a new Black Basta ransomware. I have no idea what that is, but apparently it caused them to shut down portions of their network while they investigated the attack.
Yeah.
This is, another in the long line of ransomware still out there.
Yeah.
I'd love to see the numbers in a couple of months of whether the Russian ransomware has actually gone down. Conti's offline. There's a lot of people emigrating out of Russia. And that's got to be disrupting some of their operations. And when they go to the new places that aren't as promiscuous. So I think if we look back at the data, we might see that there's probably less ransomware emerging from that region,
Okay.
and more going towards that region. But it's still unsafe out there. There's still groups. And now that the source code for Conti is released, we're going to see another bounce back and people using that code to start new ransomware operations.
Sure. I mean, people pick it up and they re-whizzle it. Re-swizzle
it.
They re-swizzle it and they make changes and they change names and they call it their own
to protect the guilty.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's it. It's interesting you say that, Patrick, because I thought Russia had just taken a stance of, you know what, seeing the global community is against us, we're not going to help with this whole
they did,
ransomware gang thing.
But they weren't before. So
that's true.
That's kind of like somebody who's never given you a dime saying, if you don't stop, I'm not going to give you any money. Well, you never gave me any money anyway. So, oh, well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's, that's true. They did help us with like one group potentially, but that was a show. But there are real things that are interfering, I think. I guess we'll have to see. We'll look back at the stats in 6 months and see whether I'm right. But the point of the matter, if you think that's going to have an effect, you still have to be protected against this stuff.
Right. Okay. All right. Very good. We moved on. Which one do you want to hit next, Dwayne?
Let's talk Redline.
Okay.
Redline. Bleeping Computer. Rig Exploit Kit drops Redline malware via Internet Explorer bug.
All right. First of all, what's Rig?
So Rig Exploit Kit. An exploit kit, and these, I guess, it's interesting how productized malware and exploitation has become at this point. So an exploit kit is just it's like an a la carte menu of exploitation. Oh, you want to exploit Internet Explorer and you want to grab cookies and you want to redirect them to a malicious site? You check a bunch of boxes, you say, create me an exploit, and it goes out and it creates you an exploit.
Wow. It's like going to 7-Eleven or Walmart or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I want an exploit kit, please.
Yeah, and these have existed, for at least a decade. I remember, on the old Windows 3.1.1 computers. So this dates back over 20 years, where you could download a program and say, "Hey, I want to create an executable, a batch file that's going to, peg the person's CPU and play really loud music over their speaker." And then you would send that to a friend and say it's a new game, and they would double click on it, and they couldn't do anything on their computer.
So this kit allows you to take over a machine and deploy Redline, which is a malware, an info stealing malware.
Mm-hmm.
And it's widely circulated on Russian-speaking forums.
Not to say it's Russia.
I'm not saying that.
There are a lot of people who speak Russian, but it's probably
we
Russian.
love them.
Dobre utro.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Means good morning.
Oh, there you go.
Vodka.
So this is just to point out that this exploit that we're talking about right now that has this resurgence is exploiting memory corruption in Internet Explorer. So memory corruption typically involves using and freeing memory, and then using more memory, and then freeing memory, and you cause so many uses and frees that sometimes you can do a use after free, sometimes you just corrupt memory in a way that it can't check things. I know certain, for example, if you run a malicious piece of software in PowerShell, there's a technology called AMSI that actually looks for malicious PowerShell. You can corrupt the memory of AMSI so it can't find malicious PowerShell. So it's one way that hackers and ransomware gangs will try and get the system to either not be able to check for security issues. In this case, they're stealing data. Now, what's the big deal? I mean, I get it if you steal a username and password, that's pretty damaging. But one of the other things that I think a lot of people don't think about is stealing cookies.
Oh, right.
So Carl, explain cookies.
Yeah, okay. So a cookie is called a biscuit in the UK, and it's a little round piece of dough that's baked.
Goes great with
usually
tea.
Sweet. Yeah, it goes good with tea. You dip it in the tea sometimes. Have it with some cream. No, all right. So a cookie is literally a name value pair. It's text. It's in a little text file that basically says, okay, for this website that I've gone to, here are the name value pairs that I want to store locally that my browser can read for this particular website. And, simply put, maybe it's got your email address. Email is the name, your email address is the value. And so the next time you go there, the cookie is read and then put into the login page for your email. Cookies have to be, can be secured, so that you can't read the website can't read them until you've logged in, right? And you've been cleared. They can be encrypted. They can be hardened to prevent different types of attacks, but the programmer has to do that.
And do they always do that?
No, they don't. No. Cookies aren't by themselves malicious. But what happens if a website stores your password in clear text in a cookie?
Yeah.
And, or your password hint that, people put password hints like they just put the password in the hint. Hey, give yourself a hint. Oh, no, here's my password. That's what the hint is.
Or your session data.
Yeah, or your session data, which means, the data that's generated as you use the site, like products that you've bought, things that you've put in your shopping cart, that kind of thing. And so if somebody else can look at those cookies, they can find out information about you, not just your login, but your usage of a website, for example.
Well, they can also do other things. Dwayne, you want to talk about cookie theft?
Oh, well, yeah. So once you steal those cookies, not only could you get a profile of the user, but you could, literally as an attacker, I could steal a cookie and then use that cookie to pretend to be you to get into, say, your bank website. I don't need to know the username and password, because when you connect into that site, if that site uses the cookie to hold your authentication and or authorization to that site, once I have that cookie, then I can use that to get access to the site. You ever check that remember me checkbox? All that data is going down into a cookie, and I can use that. Now, sadly, this exploit was patched last year. So for those of you who are not going out there and patching, by all means, please go out there and patch. So
yeah, please do that.
Know that the bad guys on the internet are typically looking for the people who are not patching. They're not looking for, Carl, Patrick, and I, who are patching every chance we get. Actually, I patched just before I get on this podcast.
They're the ones who aren't outrunning the bear.
Yep, that's it.
Just outrunning the other guy who can't outrun the bear.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, very good. I think we covered that one. So,
yep.
Microsoft is back in the news, of course, but not for having a flaw, but for discovering a flaw, right?
I love this, honestly. So this is, you're talking about the Hacker News. Microsoft discovers new privilege escalation flaw. I love this for multiple reasons. One, Microsoft discovered a new privilege escalation flaw in Linux,
Right.
which is awesome.
It is awesome, kind of.
And, honestly, if it were 15 years ago and they had come out with this, I would say it's Microsoft trying to give Linux a black eye and show that, that Windows is a better product, right? Oh my God, look at all these flaws in Linux. And nowadays, I honestly think it's because the Microsoft culture, whether it's cloud, whether it's, whatever platforms, they're trying to be as agnostic as possible. Run stuff on Linux, run stuff on Windows. It doesn't matter. They're for the best technology for the purpose, which is kind of cool. That's where I would assume that this came from, is more, not in a malicious way trying to, give Linux a bad name, but really trying to help make things more secure.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Azure cloud platform that Microsoft runs, most of the people run their web servers on Linux systems in the cloud because it's cheaper than their Windows subsystem, which uses more memory and more power and all that.
Yep.
So they have a vested interest in Linux.
So what's interesting about these particular exploits, this is for those of you who like looking up CVEs. This would be CVE 2022, so this year, 29799, and 2022 this year, 29800. And one of them is known as a directory traversal. So this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this. I mean, the finding a new privilege escalation is nothing new. They're all over the place. They happen all the time. But sometimes the terminology, like you'll read through, okay, how worried should I be about a privilege escalation that's a directory traversal? What does that even mean?
Yeah.
You might be able to glean from directory traversal that it allows you to traverse directories, but how and in what way, right?
Yeah.
Typically, a directory traversal bug is in one of two fashions. One, it gives you the ability to see directories you shouldn't see. So for example, with the web server,
right?
I could say not only just see the web pages, but I can tell it, I want to go to, instead of going to, I don't know, Microsoft.com/index.htm, which is the HTML file that's in the web server that's in that directory being served up. What happens if I do, Microsoft.com //////
Ooh.
index.htm.
// means go to the directory below mine.
Exactly.
Above.
Right.
Above mine.
So now at that point, you're two directories higher. Now, Microsoft and all the other web servers out there got savvy to that, and they said, okay, we're not going to allow you to put that in there. But then people put in %C0 %AF, which is another way of representing .. So, so there's all sorts of ways for you to directory traverse and see data you shouldn't. In this particular case, it allowed you to directory traverse through what are called symbolic links to see data that you weren't privileged enough to see.
Oh, that's not good.
And it leveraged what's known as a race case. And this is another thing that I wanted to bring up as a terminology. A race case condition is when you have two resources or two consumers, if you will, applications, processes, whatever, both reaching out for the same resource. And one of them reaches it first and the other one reaches it second. And if you are the attacker and you can reach that resource first, it's like this. Patrick and I are sitting out in front of Carl's house. And Carl opens up the door to his house and says, hey, I'm going to let one of you in, but whoever gets here first gets in the house.
Go.
Right? And Patrick and I start running. That's a race case condition. Whichever of us, I might be the bad guy and Patrick's the good guy. And if I get there first, Carl lets me in. So
yeah. And that's bad because what can you do if you get in the house first?
Ooh.
And if I say there's 2 beers in the fridge, first come, first serve, you get there first, you take both beers? Is that
exactly right? And then I replace the 2 bottles with water, and Patrick
or urine. In a bottle.
You're dark.
Yeah,
well,
you go dark quick.
I'm learning. I'm trying to think like you guys. What would I do if I was evil?
Talk about a party foul.
I know, right? So with normal race case conditions inside of a computer, what's the most horrible thing you could do? And typically it's elevating your privileges. Okay. So you could say, hey, I want to run this process as an administrator. And the computer gets ready and opens up that process ready for an administrator to connect. And then before you get denied the ability to connect to it, you race over and connect to that pipe.
Okay.
And that's how Rowhammer worked and that sort of stuff. So.
Oh yeah, I remember Rowhammer. Yeah.
Yep. So a lot of those are race case conditions. So that's breaking these down. Honestly, like I said, there are patches out there for whatever Linux distro you're in, but realize there are some privilege escalations out there.
But if you're in the cloud again, you're probably okay because your cloud provider is taking care of those patches for you.
Yep. Most of the time that is patched for you, which is really nice.
All right. And before we leave Microsoft behind, if you're really interested on the hybrid war in Ukraine, Microsoft released a report detailing the relentless and destructive Russian cyber attacks they've observed in a hybrid war against Ukraine and what they've done to help protect Ukrainian people and organizations. A hybrid war is both physical and online, right, Patrick?
What will from now on be just called war?
Yeah,
because there's no going back. It's not like those days are over.
Yeah, it's like it'd be like trying to have a war now without jets. It wouldn't make
or gunpowder
or gunpowder.
Well, because all military systems are technical now. Communications is technical.
Sure.
When I was an infantryman, we used to call stopped calling them DATs and called them CDATs.
What's CDAT mean?
A CDAT is a computerized dumbass tanker. We're gonna get a lot of hate from the armored guys, but there's a lot of tech on the battlefield now: drones, planes.
Right.
Even the infantry is getting technological, and so hacking's part of it now. It's just it's got to be.
Yeah, and according to this report, which is actually it's an interesting report if you dig into some of the details here, but they observed more than 237 operations against Ukraine from Russian-aligned nation-state actors. So that's a heck of an offensive, which has been impressive to watch. And it's been impressive to watch the counteroffensive, which I think leads in nicely into our last story.
Yeah, the game that takes down Russia.
Woo, boo, boo.
Well, maybe not all of Russia, but certainly...
if it gets enough players. So basically this is a game that was created with the express purpose of taking the player's bandwidth and using it against Russian sites and targets.
Well, and it's interesting because they follow the same paradigms that you've talked about before, Patrick, with spam and how to shut down spam, right?
Yeah.
So Patrick, I don't know if you want me to say this, but Patrick.
Yeah, you can talk about it. We can't do it, and we've been talking about how do we end spam in the world for a long time. The problem is how do you do it and not go to prison?
Right.
So one of the ideas I had a decade ago was create an add-in for mail that allowed you to find the spammers, take their URLs, and then have something visit those websites once an hour from your system.
Right.
And that's not a big deal if I do it, but if you do it and the 50 million other people they've spammed, they'll get crushed under their own weight.
Right.
And so it's really all about the scale factor. If the game would mean nothing if 10 people played it, but if 100,000 or 50 million people play it, then it's really crushing DDoS attacks.
Yeah. So that's the premise of this. It's a game online called Play for Ukraine. And it, in essence, is a crowdsourced DDoS, denial of service. As you play, and the game apparently is called 2048. Is the game puzzle? It's a puzzle game, numeric puzzle game. And as you play, it's making in the background requests to websites in Russia. And then enough people play the game. There's so many requests going to those sites, it drops them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is the game fun to play? I mean, is it something that would encourage people to play?
I've got 1,000 of them going right now. I think they're fun. It's not DDoSing. I just like games.
Yeah, right. I don't hate the rainforest. I just like Bitcoin.
Oh man, that's great. And a little dark.
And a little true.
True. All right, guys. Well, that's the show. I guess we'll see you next week, huh?
Yes, sir. Yep. We'll be here.
All right.
Yeah, if you ever come back.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm in Portugal right now.
And loving it.
It's beautiful here. A little too beautiful. I don't want to come home.
Maybe we'll
So-
do a live show from Portugal at some point.
That would be fun. All right, but until then, hey, we'll see you later. And
Thanks, guys.
don't take any wooden nickels. Bye.
Bye.